Hi, my name is Karen. Happy to be here and looking forward to having some fun.
Lizzy?
I am Lizzy Meyer, and really glad we get to do this. And I love the senior dog topic.
And I'm Tigger, and I'm thrilled to have Karen and Lizzy here. It's our Zoom meetings are sort of becoming at BioStar. They're kind of becoming an early evening party um, because we just have a good time, even though we're dealing with some serious questions and issues. So these are two of my favorite dog people in the world. So I'm thrilled to have them together. So welcome to taking care of the senior dog and getting most out of their life and allowing them to live with enthusiasm and joy in their senior years. And I know how they feel.
True.
So my first question to start us off is, I'll start with Karen. What are some of the things that senior dogs have taught you?
One, that you should always adopt one because they are lazy. What they've actually really taught me, though, is to not give up on them. Don't just assume because they're old that they don't have any use or purpose for life, because they do. I've also learned if you get a puppy, they come back to life real quick. So can keep that in mind. But essentially, they still love. My dog Pokey's 13 now, and he doesn't do the demos and he doesn't do the stuff that he always did. But I see in his eyes he still wants to do something with me, anything. So I'll kind of lift him up in the car. And yesterday we went to a park where there was smelly things. So he just walked around and smelled and was just as happy as could be. So you don't have to do agility. You don't have to do any of that when they get older. Just let them be. Let them sniff. Play nose games with them. There's a multitude of things. Sit with them on your lap. I find they do get much cuddlier. They actually settle down and cuddle versus lick you and jump on you and look for some to eat your clothes or something. So it's quite a pleasant experience to lie down with an older dog and give them a nice massage and they just I don't to me they just radiate so much love as they get older.
Lizzy?
Oh, Karen said some great things. I would add that senior dogs are kind of my favorite because they're so wise and they're generally fairly grounded, which is great if you have young dogs who are rambunctious. And they're very clear in how they communicate and how they connect with people. It's also very clear what they're going to respond to. They seem to quickly show you if they know that you're paying attention, which I really appreciate. They tend to be, in my opinion, easier to read, just their body language. They're more confident. And I would echo something that Karen said as well. Never give up on a senior dog. I've adopted quite a few over the years, and they have been my best teachers. They seem over the top complex, when I first meet them, but just doing basic things to help restore their vital force. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but just the right foods, the right environment, enough attention, etc., can just bring them back to life, and they can live, I mean, much, much higher quality of life. So it's been a great lesson for me.
So food is a big issue with senior dogs, and it's in several different categories. So, what would be your top three favorite additions to a senior dog's diet, Karen? What foods would you?
Do you mean on top of the food itself? Or are you talking
Yes.
about supplements? Well, of course, I love colostrum. My dogs get it every single day. They get astaxanthin every single day. They do get medicinal mushrooms. particularly Pokey, he gets kind of double of what everybody gets. And, Glitch, who has the seizure issue, gets all of those products as well. And I'll tell you what, you wouldn't even know that he had this issue. And Pokey, again, 13 years old, he's got a couple lumps and bumps, but don't we all? But he's still got spunk. He can still run. He can, and I truly believe this has a lot to do with the diet and these added supplements that obviously come from BioStar, and I think they're phenomenal.
Do you add any other kinds of foods? So, for instance, to the food that you feed, do you add anything in addition to that that's a food, not necessarily a supplement?
I do. I cook for all of them now, so I start with a base of bone and meat. I lightly cook it, and then I add Sojo's dehydrated vegetable and fruit mix to it. And it's got cranberries and broccoli and a little bit of sweet potato. I did find, particularly in the older dogs, they actually had a harder time pooping if it was just the raw food. So I added the bulk and fiber, particularly for Pokey. And, I'm not going to cook for 4 different dogs, so they all get the same thing. Yeah, and they all thrive on it at whatever age, that they are. But, particularly Pokey, who must have heard his name because he's tapping around here now.
Lizzy?
So my favorite foods, if I were feeding like a processed kibble diet for senior dog, I would add sardines that are preferably wild caught in water, not oil. I think these dogs are starving for a high quality, omega-3 and just additional, protein in that form. I do really like raw goat's milk or the fermented raw goat's milk for the senior dogs. And raw eggs. And if people aren't comfortable with raw eggs, you can, lightly cook them. But I just find that those are so easy to get high quality, and they just do so much for these dogs. So
It's one of the best proteins you can feed, in my opinion. Such a complete protein.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think we can't ignore the gorilla in the room, kibble.
Yes.
And Karen and I and Lizzy are all of the same mind when it comes to that. But I think, particularly with senior dogs, for an owner that has been feeding kibble for the whole dog's life, and you really want to enhance your dog's quality of life, get off the kibble. Karen?
Absolutely. You can add, I think, 3 to 4 years to an older dog's life by getting off the kibble, without a doubt. I've seen it. I've seen dogs that I said, please, and they regain some youth. Their mobility is much better. Their breath doesn't stink. Their poops are normal. And if your hips are bad and you're straight into poop, it's not fun when you're an older dog. So these are the things to take into consideration. Or if you're eating so much kibble, you're pooping 5 times a day. They get sick of that because they're pooping it all out. There's no nutritional value to it. But Lizzy is correct. If it's absolutely not an option, add the raw eggs and grind up the eggshell. That's very good too. I love your idea of the goat's milk and fermented fish or anything that's live. If you can at least get that in there, it's going to help.
Yeah, for sure. What foods would you avoid with a senior dog?
I would
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would definitely. I think kibble is a food group. I think I would just avoid that if at all possible. I am not, anti-grain in all cases, but if it's in a highly processed state, I just don't think that that's a great idea, personally, from what I've experienced. And I would probably avoid things that are, anything that has the artificial, colors, flavors, preservatives, stuff like that. That's kind of a known. I wouldn't feed any dog. I think that a lot of people have this idea that they have to feed a senior dog a senior food, and that is not something that I subscribe to. I've not noticed that that's been a helpful thing over the years. Um, so I think the processed food group is the big thing that I would avoid in general.
Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree 100% with that. Personally, the whole scam of senior food, weight management food, puppy food, blah, 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 blah. Species appropriate diet, for your dog. That eliminates so much confusion. It absolutely does. Rice is another one. People think that rice is so good for dogs. Well, there's low levels of arsenic in rice. So if you're feeding that every single day, it's going to take its toll. Plus, it's very starchy, so avoid the starches. If you need a little bit of a filler, I think a little bit of sweet potato is fine. It is starchy, but at least it's got some anti-inflammatory
I love
benefits.
making oatmeal for my dogs.
Oatmeal, yeah, that's a good one too.
Got really soluble fiber, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a grain that I really like. I don't use it every day, but
Right.
a couple times a week.
Yeah, I do too. I actually have. I'm kind of lazy.
Bowl of oats. I'm in the tablespoon club.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yep. Just a little additive to
Omega-3s. I cannot stress them enough.
I'm sorry, what?
Omega-3s.
Oh,
Make
yes.
sure the dog is getting plenty of omega sardines. Of course, guys, can you please?
Well, you did say sardine.
That's right. I think that they just ordered it from the chef.
Yes.
I use camelina oil. You can use flax oil. You can use salmon oil, but really make sure you've got enough omega-3s. There's some very interesting studies going on the short chain fatty acids in the gut.
Yep.
And omega-3s for dogs increases short chain fatty acid production, which supports the healthy microbiome of the gut.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting research. We're really understanding how important omega-3s are.
Right. Well, I was just reading too about the efficacy of MCT oil for dogs, particularly senior dogs, for brain function. So that's something also I'm going to do some more research on, but I did find it intriguing and it makes perfect sense.
What do you guys do for the picky eater syndrome? We've had a lot of customers that have asked this particular question for this webinar. A dog that won't eat new things. Lizzy?
Well, there are some easy kind of taste thing type things. My first is nutritional yeast. Tastes like Parmesan cheese, and you can sprinkle that on the food if that's where you want to go. Second would be bone broth, and you can add just a little pinch of sea salt to that. Scrambled eggs mix in really well. That's kind of an easy trick, but I don't have a lot of luck long term with that type of approach. That's kind of just to get them going.
Right.
If I would look at the foundation diet, because usually I think that these dogs are trying to say something. Maybe there's an ingredient in the food that's just not agreeing with them, and being picky is their only way of showing that to their person. So I would consider that. You can also, if it's a diet, like a component diet where you can take away certain things and see, what is this dog avoiding? Is he avoiding this vegetable or these proteins, or what's not agreeing with this dog? That's obviously impossible to do with, a bowl of kibble, because everything's together. So I find that with dogs who are raw fed and in this category, lightly cooking or even using a crock pot, just cook the food without the bone somehow and just see, because that does release a lot of the flavors and the smells. And sometimes with these older dogs, and those can definitely go through picky stages, they need to smell everything more intensely. So I've got kind of a whole bag of tricks on the tricky dogs, but the last thing I'm going to say about the tricky picky dogs is people tend to put a ton of supplements. So people who are already supplementing, they'll say, well, let's just try this one and add this other. And so there's 4 different things in this dog's food, and the dog may not love one of them. And then that creates an aversion to the entire bowl and then the entire experience. And then you have to just simplify, break it down, and see what he's trying to show you. So,
Karen?
Yeah, I agree. That was fantastic. We have this here because in Florida there's a lot of little dogs, and we get the picky dog syndrome. And I do find that, Lizzy was so correct. Oftentimes, whatever they're feeding doesn't resonate with that dog, and a dog will tell you that, like, hey, this is poisoning me. You usually see it with kibble, that dogs will stop eating. And, when I've transitioned dogs, I tell people cook something, because it is so much of it is about smell, and start with, one protein at a time. See how that goes. Maybe add a little sweet potato, maybe add this. One thing that because I have access to, that I have found really easy, there's a food called All Provide. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's lightly cooked. And every time I have a picky dog, I send some home. I say, see if they will eat this. And I'll be darned if 90% of them don't eat it. So, that's, we kind of do that. Maybe, then 2 weeks later, they won't eat the turkey. So then we, switch them to a different one. And they seem to, and I think dogs do like to rotate. I mean, who wants to eat the same thing every single day? So that's a big part of it, rotating. I don't know if my daughter's on here. I thought I saw her name, but what she found out, her little old dog likes to be hand fed. And that's something to take into consideration, because bending down over a bowl can cause pain. And those are things we don't think of. Or maybe they're starting to slide a little bit, so putting a yoga mat down or sitting right down. My dog Dana, I think you remember her, she was 15. I hand fed her probably the last 6 months of her life. She wanted to eat, but it was not comfortable for her. So just those little things, play with things, see what happens.
We have a question that's in the chat, and I think it's good to address this because it's in this conversation, which is this is Pamela, and she uses several BioStar products. She finds it a bit of a challenge to know the amount for a 6.25 pound Maltese and a 9.5 multi-poo. How about fresh pet in lieu of kibble? Lizzy?
well, I don't want to have any brand discrimination. I really don't. I would encourage anyone to look at the ingredients of whatever you're considering feeding and see, is it food? Just read. Don't fall for the marketing of some things refrigerated, some things frozen, some things canned, some things bagged. Treat them all equally and really learn what you're feeding and how is it processed, and see if you're comfortable with that. It's not a food that I've personally fed, but I like the name of it. I like the idea of fresh.
And they have the best Christmas commercials with all those dogs eating at the table. Those are just
but you know what? It's a great idea for the idea of let's feed them real food. So I would encourage Pamela to look into ways of feeding real food and see what she resonates with for this dog. So
yeah, I agree. Fresh pet's not necessarily one that I would feed, although I still think it's better than kibble.
Absolutely.
So if that's all you can do, then go ahead and do it. Because it is, at least looks somewhat fresh. It's not dried. It's not got every nutrient cooked out of it so that it's filled with vitamins. So, and I do, have people who swear by it. So I'd rather, again, the dog is eating and they've switched from kibble. But yeah, again, I prefer all provide, which price wise may be a little bit more, but I think a much higher quality food. And also I think Open Farm also has a lightly cooked food out now. And I like Open Farm because they're humanely raised, no antibiotics, no non-GMO. So they also have one out. So there are things out there, and it can be overwhelming. So I recommend you don't walk into your local PetSmart and hope you're going to come out with an education. But, definitely look for small boutique owners, because they know.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna add, oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Lizzy.
I'm going to add one detail on the picky dogs. An area that I have seen get overlooked is the dental hygiene of those dogs. If you look way in the back of the mouth, and you really have to look on the inside and the outside of the tooth and the gum line, because sometimes they can have like a hairline fracture, even an old slab fracture, from a bone. There could be some gingivitis, there could be anything, and sometimes it is way in the back of the mouth. So definitely have that checked, because I've seen that cause the really picky eater syndrome, especially in these little dogs. So don't overlook that piece, because they can be in a lot of pain. And if you can't really look in your dog's mouth, if they're not tolerant, it's actually a pretty good indicator that you're going to need someone, bring them to the vet and see what's going on. The other obvious clue is the odor of the mouth. So if it's got a funky odor, definitely have this checked out before you judge your dog as a picky eater. It might just be painful.
One thing I was going to add in response to Pamela's question is the crock pot is your friend. And every night I make dog food in the crock pot. And I do have some dogs. I have 8 dogs. So some are still raw. They're young dogs. They do well on raw. But my older group does much better on cooked. They digest it easier. And they just thrive better on, and I think part of it is the Ayurvedic Vata, Pitta imbalance. They're very windy and dry in their age, so they need something warm and stimulate the digestive fire. So they need something cooked. And for 2 little dogs, I mean, I'm feeding 8 Australian shepherds. Yeah, it's we all know it's insane. But to feed 2 small dogs, you could cook in your crock pot and be good for a couple of days. And I literally just throw in some carrots, some celery, maybe some potatoes, maybe sweet potatoes. Maybe I'll make some instant oatmeal the next morning. And you just throw your protein in and cook it on low overnight. And you've got dog food. And I add a multivitamin mineral and a little oil, and you're done. And you can add cool things like cottage cheese and goat. I love goat's milk. I don't think cow dairy is particularly good for a dog, but you can now get yogurt that's from goat, and you can get milk from goat, and they're great probiotics, and the dogs love them. If you have a picky eater, for me, I would go right for goat's milk because they love it. So that would be my suggestion, Pamela. So, okay. This one I am really interested in, ways of stimulating cognition in older dogs. Karen, I know this is your bailiwick because I use some of your games with Kimasabi, who is my oldest. But thanks to you, I mean, for everyone who doesn't know, everything I know about training dogs, I learned from Karen. So she's my go-to. So Karen, what do you do for increasing cognition?
One actually is a lot of nose work with them. And as Lizzy had mentioned before, they still have their nose. And, it can be as simple as taking an old towel, laying it out, putting little treats, rolling it up, and teaching your dog to push it. And I mean, an old dog can open up, and then the towel flies open, and they go down the little mat and eat up all the treats. So there is still some thought process to that. They've got to figure out. Sometimes they'll go around the wrong way and that type of stuff. The other thing is simply hiding little treats around the house. Because they may not see well, but and which is why I think their nose has become even stronger in old age. They rely on that so much more. So I think that's a great way. And then doing, simple things like targeting, remember touch, you know,
Yeah.
so, touch, and then you have them come over here, touch, I typically with an older dog, I don't ask for a lot of sits or anything like that because it may not be comfortable, but they can do a lot with their nose and their face, or even something, I'm a huge fan of the licky mats. I don't know if you're familiar with licky mats. Well, I have them, just so you know, but licky mats are something I should have created and then I could have retired a long time ago. But it's just like a little silicone mat. It's got a lot of, you know, divots and whatnot in it. And you can spread some peanut butter or yogurt or, pretty much anything. And the dog can lie down and they lick, 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 which is also helps with a lot of maybe anxiety. You see seniors with a lot of anxiety, that little bit of where am I? Oh, I'm just here with my licky mat. So you're bringing on the calm. So I love those types of things for them. And again, just, take your dog to the dump. It's gross, but I'll tell you what, dogs love to go to the dump. And you just let them walk around and sniff everything. On garbage day, when I walk my dogs and all the garbage is out there, we just walk along and they sniff all the garbage buckets. Those are simple things that really bring these older dogs joy. And, thinking, yeah.
Lizzy?
Well, I also like the nose work idea. What I've done is take, dehydrated treats or something that smells pretty good if you're a dog, and just scatter them kind of out in the bushes around the yard, and just let these dogs just go follow their nose and find it. The other thing that they do still like to chew, but I see people, giving them these big bones, and it's like this is not working here. So those Kongs that are actually softer rubber for senior dogs, I've actually had great luck with them. I think they're purple, so you can still stuff them with whatever food or whatever you want to use, and that's actually a lot of mental stimulation that takes quite a bit of time to get rid of. And I find that people kind of use Kongs for young dogs, but they kind of forget about them for the older dogs a lot of times. And then when I'm walking, if I'm walking an older dog, I don't do the sit and everything like that either, because I think that does hurt sometimes. But just teaching them to wait just while they're standing still gives them an idea of, I'm doing something, I've done it right, give them treats, whatever. Just keep them engaged in the walk, because a lot of people do kind of drag their older dog, at the end of the leash, and that doesn't look fun. And then car rides, I've never actually taken a dog to the dump, but that's brilliant, Karen. And I think if it's 100 degrees, it's going to be especially fragrant. So, but just taking them for car rides, I mean, even if they're not that mobile, it's a great idea. So, just simple things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, essentially, they want to be with you, and if you can be with them and provide a car ride or a snuggle or a trip to the dump, they're happy, they're content, much so than the young ones.
Yes. Okay. So this is a big topic in the dog world, which is CBD. And when do you use CBD, Lizzy?
I don't. It's not my first go-to,
right,
at all. I think it's a great. It depends on the reason you want to use it. First of all, is it for anxiety or mental, emotional issue, or is it for some sort of pain that you've had diagnosed and you're working with your vet, or you're doing supplements, whatever you're doing. I kind of use it when what I'm doing is helping, but it's not enough. So if I need to kind of boost something, say for one of my arthritic dogs, if the supplement and the food is helping, I would see how much CBD would I need to use, and then what's the dose that I could kind of wean him down on, as far as like using it daily or using it if he's had more exercise than he should or something like that. I think some people use it for every little thing, and I'm not really into that. I know it's really beneficial, but I think we need to understand why we're using it, and then consider, again, going back to the foundation of the nutrition, what you're working with, what this dog has going on already. Because it's, and sometimes you have to try different brands. They all are a little bit different in how dogs respond to them. So that's what I've found.
Karen?
Well, thanks to you, I have found what I believe is the best CBD. The woman here in Florida. And what I like, and this kind of touches about what Lizzy said, is what are you using it for? And and there are so many brands. Now, this woman breaks it down by name: calm, heal, soothe. And with the 4th of July coming up and thunderstorm season here in Florida, a lot of people were looking for something, so I gave them the calm, and they came in and said, wow, that really worked. Now, my little dog Glitch, who has the seizures from his meningitis, he gets the heal. And I've just noticed in the past week, he's got that much more spunk. Like, you would not know this dog was supposed to be dead. So, I think if you have it something, and the other one, the heal, and then there's soothe, I think, is for arthritic dogs. And a woman just came in with a very kind of arthritic, and I said, keep me posted. So I'm able to kind of track. But as far as CBD, this is the one that has impressed me the most so far, because again, it's just not a catch-all, and you would be sold in a bottle and people would say, well, what's it good for? I'm like, well, everything, I guess. So now makes it much easier for me to say, this is what you want to try. So I do believe it has a purpose, but I think to be guided in the direction and use is kind of what Lizzy was getting at as well, is make sure it's just
Lizzy actually turned me on to a CBD company recently, the Vet, Lizzy. And oh my gosh, that stuff really it's powerful.
Very powerful.
Very powerful. It's very expensive.
Yes.
But it's, I have a dog with dysplasia of the elbow, and it's a miracle. So there's also different levels of CBD. So dosing becomes a really critical point. And if you've got a dog that is seriously arthritic, Vet right now is what I would recommend for that higher level of pain and discomfort, because keeping them off of Rimadyl is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And CBD for cancer. I mean, we can't beat around the bush that there's definitely applications for particularly cannabis and CBD. Even though cannabis is illegal, except in certain states, I think we're going to see in a couple of years, this is going to become more and more of a protocol with cancer dogs, because the studies of THC and CBD on cancer in dogs, particularly for not only discomfort but homeostasis, is huge. And we already know about epilepsy. And that's very clear.
And and Karen, I've also used the brand that you're talking about, and I just find that that's a fabulous one. The Vet, I like. I really like probably 3 brands, But I
Right.
find that they all just are a little different in how,
Yeah.
my particular dogs respond to them. So that's kind of a cool thing about CBD. You can play with it and just see who needs what for what reason and how are they doing, and pretty quickly if that brand is going to work for your purpose. So
Right. And that's another thing that is hard for dog owners, for all of us, is that you read about something online and you buy it and then you try it on your dog and it doesn't give you the results and you go, well, CBD sucks.
Yeah,
This
never
is
using that again.
Yeah, this happens to be a nutritional factor that you absolutely have to try different brands, different kinds. The ones that we're speaking of are already in treats or in a liquid, but there's like 50 million different CBD liquids, and it's enough to make anybody's head spin about which one is the best. And it's really a case of you've got to try it, give it a chance to work. If you don't see results, let the company know. Hopefully, you'll get a refund and try another company. What's the name of the company, Karen? It went out of my head.
Give me 1 second, 'cause I'm gonna get the bottle because it's out of my head. Okay, hold on.
the one that she was referring to with the
Yeah.
that's CBD Dog Health.
That's it.
Yeah.
CBD Dog Health.
Oh yeah, CBD Dog Health, and here's the one that heal.
Yeah, I've used that one. It's excellent.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
the one that I use for Glitch for his meningitis. And you're sure, I think the difficulty too, you can buy your CBD at the 7-Eleven now, and people probably do that. It's the same thing as going, to a store that's not so great for pet food advice. Find a source with proven record, or somebody who has said, yes, I've used this, or speak to somebody like us for that matter, because it's so misleading and you can spend a fortune and not get any results. And then what happens, they go back to the traditional vet and they're back on Riverdale because, well, he felt better
Yes.
briefly.
Pressure points and massage for older dogs and for pain. Lizzy, you do a lot of massage.
Well, I really like, specific points. I think the best resource for that would be through Tallgrass Institute, some animal acupressure. They have actually a dog course that pet owners can take, and practitioners, and they'll teach specific points for specific issues. So it gets really detailed. Just in general, I like to do just a full body massage just from head to tail. They actually.
Can you raise your hands a little bit and sort of show a stroke?
Yeah, you can
imagine right now you're touching a dog that's
right. So if this is, let's see. So if this is the dog's head, right? So if I were to just kind of start at the dog's head, and first of all, I would always ask permission of the dog. That's key. So you want to know, first of all, are you centered? Are you grounded? Because if you approach your dog with worry or concern or sympathy of, oh, that must really hurt, they're not going to be very receptive of your work. So then I would just kind of settle your hand into the area that you want to start. So in this case, it would be kind of behind the head, top of the neck. And I would just sort of run my hand all the way down the spine to the base of the tail and just sense, is there heat? Am I drawn to a certain area? And I'm going very slowly. It's like watching grass grow. So you just go very slowly. And the dog kind of takes this in and says, she's listening. Because I actually do equine massage, but I work on my own dogs a lot. So if they know that you're listening with your hands and you're not in your head trying to analyze everything that you're feeling, they will show you exactly where their tension is. And I have found with the dogs, they're actually similar to the horses. If you find an area that has heat or it just feels like you want to hang out there, if you just sort of relax your hand there and you just ask the body to put some energy into this place, because you're witnessing, you're not doing the healing, the dog's doing the healing. You're just the facilitator. So as you're doing this, the dog will relax because they know that you're listening and what you're doing feels good. You may be affecting the fascia, you may be affecting acupressure points, energy meridians, chakra, energy centers. So you can go through the entire kind of top line of the dog from head to tail, and then I would go down the forelegs, on the outside, and then do the same with the hind legs. And then I would go from the dog's kind of chin down and just follow the midline on the bottom of the dog. And then you can actually kind of swoop down through, like in their armpit against the inside of their leg. A lot of lymphatic areas, just like with us and like with the horses. So it's more of that type of work than finding something tight and working it out. If you find something that's tight, say your dog has some back pain, which I have a couple of those, you can let your hand kind of settle, and then you can just see, how much pressure does this dog need or want. And they will definitely show if they get more tense, you're adding too much. If you settle and you exhale, they will let you in a little further. And then sometimes just moving that energy or moving that tissue will bring in so much fresh circulation, fresh lymphatics, move the fascia a little bit, and the dog has so much relief. But as far as like specific acupressure points, definitely go to tall grass. The one that jumps out in my mind is called Stomach 36. Popular point for horses too. It's kind of behind the stifle, and you'd have to look at the diagram to see it. And then the other one that I like a lot is between the eyes. It's called Yin Tang. It's a calming point. So sometimes I'll just kind of rub my thumb against, just between their eyes and kind of up their forehead. It's very calming. So I could go on and on about this.
And we would be listening, Lizzy.
Absolutely.
There's so many modalities that owners can learn. And I see owners running away from this because they feel like they're not a professional. But honestly, they can take a healing touch for animals class. Those are very approachable. Those classes can be taught. They can be taken by anyone. And it's a great technique. Can take a basic canine massage class. There's so many ways, but that's for the person that really wants to learn a skill, a program, a rhythm, a system. I'm not that type of person. So just doing kind of the way that I was describing, a more intuitive process, the important part is actually doing it. Because a lot of people will see their old limping dog and kind of go, oh, I don't have the skills to do that. I don't know how to help. But really, if you have the intention and you're sensitive with your hands and you can listen to the dog, you're going to do a lot of good work. So don't be afraid to try.
Karen, you have any?
Well, I'm not. I'm not nearly as educated on this as Lizzy, but my thing is get over here. But I do. But I have enough sense to know, like, if I'm doing something, my dog will either encourage that, or so I kind of pay attention to that. And one of the things that I do use, and I've used this a lot in my training, I probably even did it in one of your classes, and this is Tellington Touch, which I think you were referring to, is the claw. And I don't know if you can see me or not. And I do this all the time because it's the one that I can remember because it's very simple, but it really releases a lot of stress and toxins apparently as well. So you make a claw with your hand. And if this were, you could start, like on the neck, somewhere soft, and you just little bit of pressure, and then you move. And I would do this to like the frantic person in class. I would demo on that person, and that person would calm down a little bit. And I would also do it in class. If there was a particular dog that was stressed because of his human, I would go over and do this, and the dog would kind of go, So that's, the little bit I know of it. And I would absolutely bring my dog to somebody like Lizzie who's knows how to do this. But that for me has been an effective thing, and a belly rub. Give a belly rub.
What do you do about de-stressing the older dog? Lizzie, what are your de-stressing tips?
Is this dog stressed because of dementia or anxiety or pain? What type of
It's
stress?
a general question. I wasn't giving specifics.
Okay. I would look at your routine. Older dogs really like routine. So when in doubt, go back to the basics of that and just see, is this dog stressed in the normal routine, or has something major changed? Has the order of how you're feeding the dogs changed? The timing of when you walk? Just paying attention to those types of things. Seeing, did you maybe use a different dog bed? Is this dog maybe anxious because it's now painful? Something like that. So you have to be a little bit of a detective if you have an anxious dog. If it's just a general something that I'm not sure why, but I just need to get relief somehow, some rescue remedy in the water is an easy thing to do. There are people who are really good at essential oils. That's not my thing, but there are some good resources for how to do that properly. That would be the key word. I would also, if the anxiety is sudden, I really would look at pain related reasons, because that can be huge. And then the other thing would be some of these older dogs, like Tigger, you're talking about the Vata piece, as they get older and drier and the wind element starts to rattle things inside. But I would consider that aspect and just see, is there something like in the diet that might be aggravating that aspect, and seeing how you can help this dog to be more grounded and balance that out. And it's something we can help with, because it's kind of a thing to process. So yeah, I'm not a fan of just, give the dog CBD, give the dog, whatever, because I want to know what's the anxiety coming from? If it's more than just a short-term thing or an environmental thing. So that's kind of where I am.
Karen?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that, again, there are so many forms of anxiety. So pinpointing what is going on. Is there pain? Is the floor slippery now that we didn't think of? Do I really need to pee and I can't get up this darn bed? So I'm panting. So come help me. So you really do have to be a detective for this. And then, obviously there are things that you can do. Diet. I mean, I've been very fortunate with my old dogs. The only one I ever had that got anxiety was around feeding time. He'd be panting so I've been very fortunate. And I think that, if you can keep your dog balanced, most of their life, you'll see less of this. But there also is that little bit of dementia, and that's why I'm going to do a lot more research on MCT for that, because dementia, it's scary. Where am I? I think we've all seen the dog that stands in a corner because they don't know how to turn around. So you really have to be a detective. See ideally a homeopathic vet or something, who can really work with energy and figure out what's going on. Obviously, don't ignore it, but sometimes it can be as simple too as just sitting with that dog. Just, I got you. Here we are. It's me. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. You just to try to determine. It's usually pain related, I think, a little bit of dementia. Or thunderstorms. I mean, there's so many different things. So, yeah, fireworks. So you do want to have, and I actually have used some essential oils. I like, oh gosh, I'm not good. I use Stress Away, and I use that on myself as well. And I will oftentimes use that when I'm going to work with a dog. I just put it on myself first, and I can see that help. And I like Valor. which targets feelings of vulnerability. And I think that senior dogs feel very vulnerable. And as we all know, you see this with senior humans too. You can't do what you once used to be able to do. So I do like those. I do think if you're going to use them, you want to check with somebody who knows how to use them. Some need carrier oils so you don't just dump it on. And some dogs, at first find the smell offensive. So sometimes I'll just put that on myself so then the dog can sniff it without it going directly into their body. But I think there are many tools, and it's really figuring out what your dog needs and why.
Yeah. And Karen, with the essential oils, I discovered a website recently. There's a veterinarian, Dr. Melissa Shelton. It's Animal EO, animaleo.com, and she's like literally written the book on proper essential oil use in dogs. So I'm just checking that out. The other thing that came to me as you were speaking was dogs that are going deaf. Huge source of anxiety, and it's not the easiest. Like if it's in the really early stages, people have this way of determining if their old dog is going deaf, and it's walking up behind them and clapping, and that's a really disturbing thing to do in my opinion. But I consider that because it's a huge, it's a common thing.
So the last question, the last BioStar question before we open up to other questions, is a little bit of a trick question, or a little bit of a setup, and that is your favorite BioStar products, Lizzy.
I have two. The first one is cool. The Buckaroo Stew cooling formula. And I have noticed it's excellent for these hot, wiry Vata dogs who are panting a lot, they're itching a lot. I really like that combination if I can't create something that's working. And then the Optimum Senior is fabulous. Optimum in general, but the Senior I love because of the holy basil, especially. And I've noticed a huge shift with that product.
You want to explain why holy basil would be so good for a senior dog?
Holy basil is an Ayurvedic herb that's an adaptogen, which means it helps the body to adapt to stress, internal and external. So I think that it does help with the mental side of the stress response. And older dogs, I've also found they can be more sensitive to stimuli, with inside or outside. And it just seems to kind of level everything out without sedating them at all. They just seem to be able to go with the flow a little bit better. It's one of my favorite herbs. And every dog can use it. It's not going to aggravate one type of dog. And when I'm helping people to learn how to feed their dogs a real food diet, I tell them I will not do this without a whole food multivitamin. You have to add calcium of some kind. So a seaweed calcium if your dog can't do bone, and then you have to feed an Optimum. It's like pick one. Just start with one, rotate through Optimum. I don't care. But if you don't do it without Optimum, I don't know of anything comparable that I would feel comfortable feeding. And I've concocted stuff with herbs, but I feel very confident about this formula. So those are my favorites.
Lizzy. Karen?
Excellent. I agree with both of these, and Tigger, you know me very well. You explain things to me over and over and over again, and my technique is Tigger says it's great, just do it for your dog. And I've had some actual success with that. But one of the things I really promote is colostrum for the allergy, the itchy, the immune boosting, and the calming effect. So that's kind of one I just think, hey, this, because people unfortunately do like a catch-all. I can go down the line and say this, and this. Well, what should I do? Well, I would do all of it. Well, give me one. So that's what I usually do. All right, start with your colostrum. And then I'm a huge fan of the astaxanthin as well for the anti-inflammatory properties and just overall health. And so those are two that again I know enough about, to say, here, do this. Otherwise, I point to your book and I say, do you see this woman here? She's the smartest woman I know, and she says your dog needs it. And people believe it. They really do. Because it's true. When I say that, I say, I'm a trainer and I met her through that, but she taught me so much about this. And oftentimes I'll pick up your book and refer to something as well. So obviously we love all of your products. Those are two that that I use and typically recommend that others do as well.
Oh, thank you. And Emily and I are big Juvenate users for our dogs. So that's our go-to, particularly for the senior dog that needs more mobility.
Okay.
BioStar is Juvenate.
Juvenate. Okay.
Yeah. So Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you and questions, and thank Lizzy and Karen for my part of the Zoom. And now I'm going to step away a little bit and open it up to the audience.
All right. Do you guys have questions? Some of them we've kind of addressed as we're going along.
Hi, this is Suze. Can you hear me?
Hi, Suze.
Okay. I was just wondering, is there any good sites that you could refer us to get more information on a raw or whole food diet for our dogs?
There are a lot of forums that are actually quite good on Facebook, starting raw feeding. I do find that it can be complicated, particularly if you're trying to get the organ meat ratio and this kind of stuff. So it can be. So it depends, again, on how much time you want to put into it. I've made myself pretty clear. I want simplicity. So, I will find a good raw food that I know has all the nutrients in it. And then I feel very comfortable to throw some stuff in. We clean our refrigerator out once a week. Goes in the dog's food. And I mean, it's the good stuff, the vegetables or something like that. So, just maybe even search raw feeding groups, that kind of thing. Everybody has their own opinion though. So it can be overwhelming. It can be scary. You can get bullied. Sometimes, just going into, like I said, a locally owned pet food store, they're very knowledgeable. They can help. And oftentimes too, I mean, personally myself, I try to find the best, for those that say, well, I don't have money, I try to find the most cost effective way to get good nutrition into that dog. So, do a little research, meet with a few people, talk with a few people, and decide what's easiest for you. And
yeah, definitely interested in that. Trying to do a bulk thing too would probably be most cost effective.
I can't hear you.
So trying to do like a bulk thing would probably be most cost effective.
Yes, absolutely. There's some really good bulk things. You bring in 25, 30 pounds a month, depending on how much you're feeding, get a freezer. And that's a very cost effective way. And then again, add things that you would have anyway. So you're not, if you want to make it go a little further, like Tigger said, sometimes you throw in some oatmeal, sometimes some sweet potatoes, some leftover vegetables. That will bulk it up and make your food go longer. But what I tell people, yeah, you're probably going to spend more than you'd ever thought you'd spend on dog food, but guess where you will not spend it? At the vet.
Yeah.
Period.
That's very true.
And I would add an actual book that's a great resource, in addition to what Karen was talking about. Dr. Richard Pitcairn's book, I think it's on the 4th edition or something, and it's Natural Health for Dogs and Cats. And he gives some homemade recipes and some, he talks about raw food as well. I think it's a really good thing for anyone getting into this to educate themselves before they just completely leap. Tigger's book is a great read. Definitely read that. Read Dr. Pitcairn. Answers Pet Food actually has a really informative website. Some places they may have like a frequent buyer club. If you're looking at, trying to get a little discount somewhere. They have a feeding calculator. I think a lot of people have no idea what they're going to end up needing to feed, and they don't want to do the math. So I really think, doing your homework on that level will save you a lot of confusion later, because relying on just a group or Facebook or something, there are so many opinions, there are so many ways of doing this, and trying to get it balanced is the other piece. And I think just reading, even reading Dr. Ian Billinghurst's book, an Australian book, Give Your Dog a Bone, fabulous must read for anyone considering fresh food of any kind, especially raw, and especially anything with bone. That does require education if you're going to go there.
Yes. Yeah.
And rotating proteins. There are a lot of very cool raw food companies that you can buy a multitude of different proteins, and they'll ship it to you. And Raw Feeding Miami is one of my favorites. Hair Today, HARE, another one. And they already grind the bones and the organs and the muscle meat together. So they've done a lot of the work. And you have a wide variety. I mean, I think tonight a couple of my dogs got goat. Not a normal protein, but they love it. So I rotate proteins every single day, sometimes from meal to meal. And the other thing you're going to notice about raw, which I found to be really profound, was how little they pooped. Meaning they utilized everything, 90% of what I feed them. And it was very, I got a real wake-up call, or it made it a real impression on me when I was in Wellington, Florida this winter, and I was at the dog park, and I was seeing the incredible amount of shit that other dogs were depositing. And I was like, oh my God, you deal with it every day? I mean, that's how
people don't think anything of it, and you're so right. And if you go back to that senior dog, if they have to poop that many times a day, that much poop, it hurts their body. And thank God for you with 8 dogs that you don't have to clean up those big piles of poop.
The other last resource I'd offer is the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association's ahvma.org. Those vets, if you find someone who can work with you, a lot of them are very savvy with nutrition. So because you want to find a supportive vet, maybe a homeopath vet or a holistic vet, but just make sure you feel some local support, because otherwise this can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did we answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I've thought about this a lot in the past, but I've always been like, where do I go with it?
Yeah.
Well, you started here.
If you want to make it start simple, just start home cooking first. If raw it feels a little intimidating, home cooked may be a really good transition into raw.
And
like I said, the crock pot is your friend.
We thought about getting chickens, and I'm always like, what am I going to do with all those eggs? Well, that would be a great way to,
Both Lizzy and I have chickens, and one of the reasons is for our dogs.
Okay to feed them the shells, right? That's good for them.
Oh, they love them. In fact,
I feed them all my shells all the time.
I have to be very careful with one very sneaky senior named Kimasabi, who will sneak into the hen house and very cleverly take an egg and stuff it in his cheek, so that if I see him from a distance, I don't know he has an egg, and then parts it off into the orchard to eat it.
Yeah, I would add that if you are buying eggs from a grocery store, it's less safe to feed the shell because they spray them with different types of things. But certainly if you're getting eggs locally, or if you have eggs, I think it's better to give it with the shell.
Absolutely.
Most of my dogs will eat it, but for the one who doesn't, I kind of smush it up and then disguise it somewhere else. And I would echo kind of in terms of like a place to start. I didn't feed fresh food before I started working at BioStar 4 years ago. So kind of just like having a mentor, like Lizzy or Tigger keep in my mind, or Karen's son Daniel. I stop in and see him every week. For sure, most small pet stores are pretty well versed in nutrition, and they know their products and their pre-made raw or home cooked products inside and out. So, even just going there versus going to PetSmart or Petco will go a long way.
Mhm.
Thank you for going to see Daniel once a week.
Anybody else? The question is, when do you stop vaccines for seniors? Karen?
Who's going to touch this?
This is really a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. Personally, after the core shots for my dogs, they don't get them anymore. I run titers. There are some phenomenal organizations that you can look for research. The RabiesChallenge.org is huge. They're doing a lot of work for the over-vaccination of rabies and the chronic issues that it's causing. Dr. Ronald Schultz, he's the premier immunologist in the country and has a whole chart of, oh, by the way, distemper lasts 7, probably 15 years. So the information is out there. I do strongly recommend and this is something that I truly, in my heart, believes affects a lot of these seniors' dogs, is this over-vaccination. So I am a huge fan of anti-vaccinosis to get rid of the heavy metal toxins and liver detox and things. I run a titer. They are not the only one mandated by law is rabies. And, this is what the RabiesChallengeFund.org is trying to do is allow titers. But, there's a lot of money lost if they're not vaccinating every year. So it'll be a tough fight. But that's my answer to that. They have their core. They're good to go.
Lizzy?
This is my least favorite topic. This is where I really believe that if you're working with a homeopathic vet, that is where you're going to get the best guidance, because the legal aspect of this I'm not comfortable dealing with. It's just every state has different rules with rabies. The others you can do titer testing, which is great. So I think that's probably the best thing you can do. And if there is a holistic or homeopathic vet who can help kind of steer you in your particular state, that's probably the best advice that I have. It's a really hard topic. I mean, even county to county, it's different.
Yeah.
So it just depends on where you are. And I think the other piece, there was this website, I'd have to find it, but figuring out what is the incidence of rabies in your area. Are you in a hot zone? I mean, it's really good to know that before you want to, go down that path. You need to educate yourself on what's in your area. So I think that's important too.
Tigger?
Yes. Oh,
Your
God.
turn.
I was hoping I didn't have to say.
Dr. Karen's book actually has a really good write-up on, this whole topic. So
I vaccinate for rabies. I live in Virginia. That's the law. That's the extent of the vaccinations I do on senior and well into adult dogs. They get all their vaccinations as puppies. I'm vigilant about that. But I just do rabies as senior dogs. I don't think they need anything more. And so that's all I do. And I've never had a dog that had a bad rabies vaccine reaction. I'm lucky. But I do what's required, and that's it. And luckily, I have a vet that although he's not holistic, he certainly understands and respects my wishes on how I want to take care of my dogs.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And sometimes if people can, they go to a mixed animal clinic, it's actually less of a difficult conversation. You just go in, this is what I need, just what's required by law in my county, whatever. It can be a much less stressful experience. You will still get what you legally need, and that's it. They're not going to try to sell you on a bunch of other stuff, which takes away from a little bit of the stress.
Mhm. Or, the shaming, because I think that does happen in a lot of practices. And, what I tell the people I work, you hired this person. You are the advocate for your dog. And I think it's important that you educate yourself on what you believe your dog needs or does not need, and find the person that will support you in that, or the vet, obviously. And homeopathic vets are very good at that.
Yes.
And they'll work over the phone too. They do phone consults.
Yep.
One thing that is not a question, but I wanted to bring up, because it came to me just as we've been all talking. One thing that we haven't talked about with senior dogs and young dogs, all dogs, is the effect of our joy and our balance on our dogs. And I did this a little experiment with my dogs of every time I saw them, I would smile and they would get so excited. And it made me realize, holy cow, they must think I'm not the most serious, person, because I know what, hi. Oh, see, they've all perked up. So that's really like, wow, it's something so simple to look at our dogs and smile at them. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they're looking at this very sort of grim-faced old crone, like, oh man, there's Tigger.
Well, it's interesting you made that face, Tigger. It's interesting you made that face, because they do read your face. And when we do close our mouth because we're grumpy or stressed, in the dog world, that is aggression. That means I'm going to bite. The dog that bites that closes their mouth and the lips come forward. So when we walk around like this all day, it does have a huge impact. So yes, if you are joyous, we all know when you act the fool, who's right there? Your dog to act the fool with you, and they love you for it. So yeah, that's huge. And they do take on our emotions and our stress and our anxiety. And I could tell right away. I'd get a phone call. I have the worst dog in the world. He's really anxious and he never shuts up and he's really stressed and hyper. And what am I supposed to do? And I want to say, shut up, and we will get you there. But it makes perfect sense that that's how a dog is, because that's what they live with.
Yeah, smile more, and it really has an impact on the dogs for sure.
Absolutely.
I have another question. Do you have any recommendations for supplements to help with heart issues? Lizzy, what do you recommend for heart issues?
Oh, it really depends on what the issue is. There are, the Chi Institute, the vets that are trained in acupuncture through the Chi Institute, which is in Florida, they have access to an incredible Chinese herbal education. And I feel like heart issues can be so specific, and depending on the age and all this stuff and whatever meds, if any, the dog's already on. I feel like that's a wise place to go, to find a vet who can help with that, because they can do a custom formula. That's a really big category. That is. And you wouldn't want to just, go find something online and kind of hope it works, because we are talking about the heart after all. So general heart supporting foods. So, hawthorn, basil.
Raw heart.
I was going to say heart, yeah.
feed the sick organ, and if that's gross for people, they can get dehydrated. Heart, the organ meat part is really important and often gets missed with homemade and raw diets. So that's just a little thing I'll mention. And then, like in Dr. Pitcairn's book, there are specific nutrients that you can find whole food versions of that support the heart in general. So that's a huge question, but lots of answers are available.
Karen, anything you want to add?
Yeah, again, I'm not a huge expert in this, but I do know if there's an affected organ, you feed the organ. That's kind of at least a baseline. And then, as Lizzy said, find somebody who's an expert in this and try, obviously you're going to get whatever heart medicines are on the market, but I think that, the more holistic are actually doing the healing versus the band-aiding, that, the dog will ultimately not get better or not have any healing. So, look at nature for true healing.
And there's one other thing I would add. Dr. Judy Morgan is at Chinese medicine vet. She has a couple of cookbooks that are specific, for liver issues, heart issues, kidney, bladder, whatever. So she's got some good resources there that would specifically help the heart, and a couple of options on, depending what the heart issue may be. So I would check that out for sure.
Yep.
Emily, any other questions before we come to a close?
It looks like not.
Well, I want to thank everybody, especially our panelists, Karen and Lizzy. And just to give you all a heads up, BioStar is releasing a revolutionary new probiotic the beginning of August that blends the fulvic and humic acids with the soil-based organisms and chaga mushroom. So you've got all the components of healthy soil in a liquid that you can give to your dog.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Give me some of that. Put that on my list.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tigger. It was a great opportunity. Appreciate it.
Oh, so glad to have you. You guys were great. We'll have you back for another topic.
Thank you.
Look forward to it.